Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Chris Legaspi, and today we are going to continue with the new series on composition lessons. So, this series is where I go through some lessons learned from for me, some very influential, very useful, and very, I would argue, important compositional books. There's not too many out there, at least ones that are more well known, more available and specifically geared towards artists. So we're going to go through some various books in this series, and then sort of share my takeaways from each book. And this week we are going to talk about framed ink. Framed ink. Comment below if you have heard of this book or have seen it or you own it. It is a wonderful book. It's quite iconic in my opinion, and it has so many wonderful, wonderful lessons. It's really difficult to choose just one or two or a handful, but I did my best here. So we're going to look at framed ink today. In this book, like I said, we're going to cover a couple lessons. We're going to start with a brief overview of the book, just talk a little bit about the book and the author. And then we're going to talk about some of the lessons we learned. Like I said, there's so many lessons. I'm just going to go over 5 lessons from the book that really impacted me, that really resonate with me. And then we're going to do a draw along together so we can practice some of the stuff that we just learned together. So I hope you have your sketchbooks with you. And then I'm going to do a demonstration where I demonstrate my compositional process based on some of the topics and lessons we just learned from this book, Framed Ink. And before we begin, I just want to let you know that I will be teaching a compositional class, a live class. This will be a proper, really in-depth live class where we go into composition. That class is going to start soon, but you can get an early bird discount and early bird access. So typically when I do a live class, I release it first to my email subscribers. Of course, my email subscribers get access to not only live classes, but they get discounts on live classes and courses. So if you're interested in learning from me, if you like my work, if you like my teaching, and you want to go into depth on composition and other topics that we'll be teaching, of course, more live classes in the future, all you have to do is go to earlybird.drawwithchris.com. Once again, that's earlybird.drawwithchris.com. That's my website. Enter your email here and you can sign up for early bird access to my next live class, and you can get a discount code. So earlybird.drawwithchris.com. And of course, if you're already subscribed to my email, you are already getting the wonderful early bird access emails to my next live classes. And before we begin, comment below. Let me know where you are located. Where are you watching from? And what time is it for you? I am currently in Thailand and it's Saturday morning for me. So thank you for being here wherever you are. So today, let's quickly talk about Framed Ink. This is a wonderful, wonderful book. Subtitle is Framed Ink, Drawing and Composition for Visual Storytellers, written by Marcos Mateo Maestri, and forgive me if I mispronounce his name. First published in 2010 by Design Studio Press, which is a wonderful publisher. They publish many great art books geared towards entertainment, art, illustration, and things like that. Living and working in LA and Hollywood and going through the various art classes and working at various studios, you don't not hear about this book. Practically every art student I knew in LA has this book. I believe Marcos Mateo Mestre went to Art Center, and Design Studio Press, the publisher, is based in Hollywood, founded by Art Center grads. Art Center is the top entertainment school in the country, based in Hollywood. Framed Ink, to me, is just one of those books that is iconic for a reason. It's a must-have, and it's written by a man who is incredibly well qualified and it just has a rich background. An incredibly gifted, skilled draftsman and composer. Marcos Mateo Mestri worked in entertainment industry, mostly known for working in animation, DreamWorks specifically, worked on various animation projects. He's also a sequential artist. He's written, I believe, a few graphic novels. So this book has that flavor. It has a very cinematic, geared flavor, and definitely geared towards sequential art. If you've never seen this book, and we'll look through some pages of this book, you can see that it has a lot of its compositional principles and techniques and strategies are geared towards sequential art, graphic novels, comics artists, storyboard artists, and things. So it's really about storytelling, like the cover says, storytelling through a series of pictures. For me, as mostly a movie poster artist, illustrator, cover artist, those kind of things, the sections on sequential art, I did kind of gloss over them. I don't gravitate towards them that much, but definitely the principles covered are rock solid, and they are some of the principles that I talk about that I use every day, and definitely worth reviewing. And here's one of the beautiful quotes from the book. There's only a few pieces. It's a very long quote, a few pieces of the quote. I'll quickly read the full quote. This is by the author. And what he's talking about is general thoughts on narrative art and composition. And the author says, let's tend to use simplicity, shadows, and silences as opposed to an avalanche of detail so that they can experience them in their own way, they being the audience. And he continues, let's always leave them wondering about a little something, longing to know a bit more, to continue watching or reading. And let's give them answers while simultaneously raising new questions. It really is a seductive game. That to me is so powerful. Let's tend to use simplicity, shadows, and silences as opposed to an avalanche of detail. So, if you like my work, you like my videos, you've taken one of my classes, you have heard this before. I talk about this all the time, and I didn't invent the idea of simplicity. And I always say that in composition, well, generally in art, but specifically in composition, I always say try to do more with less. Instead of adding an avalanche of detail, right? Instead of adding, wrinkles, details, folds, belt buckles, bullets, or whatever to your scene. Instead, aim to remove unnecessary things. Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. And I love the closing quote. It really is a seductive game. I interpret that as good composition sucks you in. I always say you want your pictures to draw the viewer's attention. You want to suck your viewer into your picture, into your story. You want to seduce them. So seduction is the art of getting someone's attention in a way where they're not, you do it subtly and quietly through various means. Artists, picture makers do this. We seduce our viewers to look at our pictures. This is a wonderful quote that shows you the philosophy of the author here. And he's just incredibly skilled draftsman, very knowledgeable. So it's a wonderful, wonderful book. If you don't own it or have never seen it, of course, I highly, highly recommend it, especially for those who are serious about becoming good designers and composers of pictures. Okay, now let's talk about some of the lessons. Again, this book is just jam-packed. It's quite large, it's 140 or so pages, and it is packed with principles, with techniques, with ideas, with concepts, all sorts of various things. Composition, in a way, is like that. I tried to write compositional instructional content. I'm teaching a class right now on composition, and really the hardest part is trying to organize all the ideas, because the beautiful thing about composition is there are many, 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 many ways to make your picture better, to improve your picture, to design your picture, and they all work together. Things like the golden ratio, contrast, value contrast, shape contrast, they all kind of work together. And that's evident here in this book. I'm just going to go through some, just kind of the 5 takeaways. And again, there are so many, and all of these takeaways, they all work together, they all integrate together. So you can take these in isolation or use them together. These are just 5 of the some lessons that grabbed me in the book, starting with number 1, lighting and mood. So the author, he's more of a cinematic type artist. He worked on various animations and written graphic novels. So he's definitely aware of story. And part of telling a story is setting the mood. And lighting is a big part of that. So this page really grabbed me because, probably, you're watching this video, you probably know or like my portraits, you like my head drawings. So when I saw this page, I realized like, wow, I really need to pay more attention to how lighting affects the portrait. Here he just uses the portrait as an example, but lighting affects the entire composition, obviously, especially if you have characters, especially if trying to tell a story. So this is just a very quick shot that shows you the importance of lighting. And you can see on the left here, you have essentially the same picture, a portrait, just a straight up face on a canvas, but you can see all the various moods created when you move the light, when you change the contrast, when you make the light mostly on the right, when you block the light with objects, when you do underlighting, when you do overexposed, when you do underexposed, make everything dark, rim lighting. So really, really powerful example of this. This would be a great exercise as well. Okay, the second lesson that really grabbed me was the concept of lenses and framing. Comment below if you are also into photography, or maybe you got your first proper camera. When I mean proper, like one of the fancy cameras that have fancy lenses, like a Nikon or a Canon or a Sony or something like that. I recently got into photography a few years ago, bought my first proper camera. And then I looked back on this book. When I first read this book, I wasn't into photography at all. I didn't own a proper camera. Now that I have started to understand photography, now reviewing this book, it makes so much sense. And what's important about this book, and again, this is geared obviously more towards storyboard artists. If you want to be a storyboard artist, you have to get this book, and you have to know lenses, of course. And also, if you're a concept artist for movies or animation, you definitely need to know the effects of camera lenses. And it's important even for, movie poster artists like me, because different lenses create a different mood. If you're watching this, if you're more like me, if you're more into poster arts, book covers, card art, card illustrations, you need to know lenses when you're photographing your model. So, we're not going to talk about photography, but he basically talks about two types of lenses, wide angle lens and long lens. Wide angle lenses are, they're generically known as landscape lenses because they're wide. You get the whole scene. Generally what they're known for. If you're not a photographer, your iPhone, your camera phone is generally defaulted to be a wide angle lens because most people like me or most late people who aren't photographers who just want to take snapshots with their camera phone, the phone makers know to put a wide angle lens because you can just generally get the most. You can get yourself and the background with a wide angle lens. So think about it that way. You can get a lot of the background. The other way is called a narrow lens or a long lens. And these lenses are typically what you shoot portraits with. You shoot people, you shoot objects, you shoot things. Generally, of course, you can shoot whatever you want with whatever lens you want, whatever subject. But that's generally what it is. So the short lens is for people and subjects and portraits. Wide lens is generally for environments. But for videographers, for cinematographers, it's important for the various effects, the cropping, the framing, and the various lens distortions. So here on the right, the author Marcos, he drew what some of the effects of various lenses. So this top image here would be, let's say you're just going to shoot the same exact subject, a character in front of a house, right? A character in front of an environment, in this case, in front of a house. If you shoot the character with a wide angle lens, you'll get the whole environment, but the character, which is closer to you, closer to the camera, will get this warped distortion look. Now, if you shoot the second down, if you shoot the exact same thing and put the camera in the exact same place, or well, we have to put it a little bit further away actually, to get the environment, to get the same shot, to get the environment and the character in the same shot, you have to physically move your camera and shoot with a long lens. And this is the effect that you get. So you see what happens here? Same subjects, two different lenses, but two radically different feelings, right? Two radically different frames, radically different shots. You can see what one has a bit of distortion and it feels a little uncomfortable, right? You're like, oh, it's just, it feels like the first word that comes to mind is just too close. You're like, oh, you're way too close. You want to pull away. This character is way too close. The second one, you could see that it feels more comfortable. You're like, okay, I have more space to think and absorb the world, absorb the picture. The picture is not warped and distorted, right? It doesn't have the camera lens warping or distortion. But, I feel less connected to the character. The character is so tiny. So here, it's a totally different feeling. So that's the importance of lenses. And that's something obviously to be aware of if you're, like I was mentioned, if you're a poster artist like me, or if you're illustrating magic cards or book covers and you're going to shoot a model, you got to be aware of, what lens to choose, right? If you choose a wide angle lens and you're too close to your model, you will get weird distortions that you may not want. And obviously, if you're shooting with a longer lens, right, you'll get more accurate proportions and things, but you're probably going to need a zoom. Need to have a zoom feature if you want to get, a more tighter shot of your model, but still have a more comfortable, realistic look without distortion. Okay, lesson number 3 is thumbnailing. So of course, again, if you're a fan of my work, you've been watching my videos for a while. If you're one of my students, you know I talk about this endlessly. I talk about thumbnailing all the time. And of course, any great compositional book is going to have a section on thumbnailing. And this book, Framed Ink, has a big old section on thumbnailing. Just make me so happy. And he talks about so many just hits. Every pro tip, technique, concept in composition he covers in the thumbnailing section. Each one is so useful, so powerful. It's just great. And I just grabbed the first 2 pages of the section on thumbnailing, and wow, what a powerful image right here on the left. You could see it's, and this is one of the compositions that I love and use all the time. I call it the corridor. I just love this composition. And you can see how he expands on the image based, but the image is based on the thumbnail and uses, and then he combines thumbnailing with other techniques to flesh out the image. And again, this is just the first 2 pages in this section. He goes over many different examples of how you can use thumbnails to begin your composition. He talks about the importance of it. Okay, lesson number 4 is motion and animation. I believe this is still in the thumbnailing section in the book. And he talks about how to add a sense of animation and movement based on the elements, shapes, and here specifically characters on the left. Here you can see you have a frame with 3 different characters, but notice how not only are the characters arranged in a dynamic way in this really sharp angle, it's almost an arcing angle, right, with some perspective. So it kind of adds the feeling that they're coming at you. And they're also getting smaller, right? So you can see the foreshortening and the perspective. But also the gun. Look at the gun. The gun starts here and then goes here and then it's at this angle. So you could feel the movement. I mean, that is just so powerful. So such beautiful design. Once you understand this concept, anytime you want movement, you know that you could put elements that move together. So I do this all the time. When I first saw this page, I'm like, oh, yep, I I do that. I'm glad a master, a compositional master, also acknowledged that this works. So wonderful sense of animation. Here you could see on the bottom here, bottom left, you can see these figures, 3 figures in a scene. Actually, there's 4. I think there's 4. 3 figures in the scene, and you can feel the arc that the characters follow, and they change poses. One is on the ground, one is on a ledge, one is jumping, hanging on a wall, but jumping towards you. So you could just feel the movement in the pose, in the design, in the placement. It's just excellent use of movement. Here on the right, he talks about a little bit about camera movement. So this is, again, this is more towards cinematic type storytelling. This is absolutely necessary for those of you watching who want to be storyboard artists or who want to working on a storyboard portfolio. You absolutely have to know camera movements. And this is called a pan. And wow, even as a still image. Well, this image grabbed me because, as a poster artist, I work mostly in the vertical format. And wow, 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 wow. I mean, lots of movement, starting with the clouds. Notice how the clouds arc towards him. Notice how the spear points, they just shoot your eye straight up like a missile, like a rocket, shum, 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 shooting you up. But the clouds contrast and arc you down. So that is contrasting movement, which just is, as to put in the author's words, is very seductive, right? This kind of contrast and movement will force you to look at this image. I guarantee if this was a poster hanging on a wall or on a bus stop in your city and you walk by it, you would turn your head because this is such incredible use of movement and contrast. So wonderful, wonderful use of movement here. Okay, another lesson number 5 that I took away, one of many, is the importance of the ground plane and creating depth. So this is really key. This is one of the things that I talk about a lot is creating the illusion of depth. As a 2D picture maker, we need every single tool in the book to make our pictures pop out. That's really my number one goal. My number one goal, and I'm sure you're watching this, you share a similar goal, is that you want your characters to pop off the paper. You want your vehicles to pop off the paper. You want your environments to pop off to make it look like they're coming at you, to jump off the paper. That is one of our goals as picture makers. And this chapter talks a couple ways how he uses the ground plane and some techniques like lines, layering, and of course, accurate perspective drawing and foreshortening. Obviously, it's important if you're drawing environment, specifically if you're drawing man-made objects, you have to know perspective drawing. And here on the left, this is a little bit on a different topic, but here he places the camera down low and he shows you just based on these 3 frames how he creates depth based on the various elements. Here you have just the environment creating depth. Here you have the environment and introduction of characters on 2 different planes of space. Now you have characters and 3 different planes of space. So it's really, really cool description and techniques and tips to help you get depth in your pictures. And I said I'm going to do 5, but there's so many in this book. I just had to throw in one more as a bonus. And comment below, does this look familiar? Again, if you're a fan of my work, if you've been watching my videos, you know, you have seen this before. Especially if those of you who have taken my head drawing classes, I talk about this endlessly. This is basically one of my core principles of my core philosophy. This is one of the things I build my entire career on, is the importance of shape and silhouette, designing silhouettes. And obviously, this book is mostly about cinematic storytelling, narrative storytelling. But like I say, any great composer, any great compositional master cannot have a discussion about composition without talking about silhouette. And here he talks about silhouettes of your characters' heads, and also explores silhouette of the character's body, character's figure. I just wanted to throw this in there because, I always say that I believe what I teach is the best information available. And I say that because none of it is mine. I didn't invent head types, silhouettes, contour. I didn't invent that concept. That concept already existed long before me. And here it just reinforces that, again, a great master of composition also emphasizes shape and silhouette. Okay, let's do our first draw along together. So here, what we're gonna do is I'm going to give you guys a little brief and we're gonna sketch and we're just gonna do some thumbnail sketching, no detail, no complex portrait drawing, anything like that. We're just gonna have some fun, create some thumbnails. The brief for our first draw along is establishing shot of a villain in their lair. So that's our brief, that's our concept. Art director just knocked on our desk. Hey, Chris. Hey, Mr. Art Director. What's up? Hey, Chris, today we need to create a shot of establishing our villain in their lair. Can you do that for us? Yes, sir, of course. So here are our rules. So thumbnail sketch only, just loose thumbnail sketch. 3 values only. No complex rendering. Typically, I start with a 2 or 3 value system, like basically white, black, and midtone, basically. So 3 values only. And here we're going to do 3 separate shots of 3 focal lengths. So kind of like the lesson we talked about the camera, we're going to pretend like we're a bit of a cinematographer here. And we're going to play and experiment and create and design a shot with 3 different focal lengths. We're going to go wide, right? The wide shot, the close, the sort of the mid establishing shot. Try to get a bit of a close up. So 3 focal lengths, 3 different shot, 3 different thumbnails. And before we begin, obviously we need to ask some questions, right? Who is this villain? Like a skinny, crazy guy like the Joker? Is he a big, giant, fat alien like Jabba the Hutt? Is he machine-like computer program like Agent Smith in The Matrix? So that's obviously the first question. Who is the villain? And then second question is what kind of villain are they? So, kind of explore what kind of villain are they? Like I mentioned, are they like crafty and sneaky like the Joker? Are they cold and mechanical like Agent Smith? Are they like big, powerful, and dominating like the Balrog in Lord of the Rings, like that big dragon character or whatever? And what is the mood? What is the mood we want to set? Do we want to set a dark and sinister mood? We want to set maybe a bit of a lighter mood, a mysterious mood. These questions are important because these are decisions that we answer with our drawing, right? So this is what high-level composers do. This is what expert composers do. They don't ask the question like, oh, I wonder what belt buckle I should put on my villain, or I wonder what kind of nail polish my creature should wear. Oh, I wonder how many horns should I put on my dragon? No, those are the wrong questions. The high level, the experts ask, what kind of story do I want? What kind of emotion do I want to communicate? Right? So keep those in mind as we draw. Okay, so for this example, I'm going to work in a bit of a widescreen, more of a cinematic format. You don't have to, let's say you're focused on a card illustration portfolio right now or a comics portfolio. Definitely work in the portrait format, but just for fun, I want to play with this more cinematic widescreen. All right, so villain, villain, villain in the layer, establishing shot, 3 different lenses. Obviously, the first is the wide shot. So this is the shot where I see all of the environment and I'm far away. So basically, let's imagine I just walk into the room or walked into the castle or whatever. There's my villain. So what kind of villain do I want? What kind of mood do I want? How about he's a futuristic demon knight? Sci-fi demon. It's a sci-fi. He's a demon. So he's like a demon, kind of robot, mechanical. Samurai comes to mind, samurai armor. He's a sci-fi robotic demon with some anime flavor. How about that? There you go. The one character that comes to mind is that giant samurai in Sucker Punch, that old Zack Snyder movie. So, samurai demon, and he's going to be sitting So he's a demon and he rules his kingdom, and he's huge. He's a big giant type of guy. He's an old war general, fought a lot of wars. And we're walking into his throne room. So I'm just going to sketch, kind of get a feel. I'm going to place my horizon. Now, in the book, the author Marcos mentions the importance of placing the horizon line and the camera. So if we're low, he's going to feel huge. And I want him to feel huge because he is huge. So I'm going to put the camera really low. Now the question is now too is, do I want him centered? Centered is quite adds a lot of drama. Off center, less drama, but a bit more interesting compositionally. Obviously, the rule of thirds, which Marcos does talk about, is important. I'm going to align him with the rule of thirds. All right. So let's just do that for now. So he's low to the camera, and we're going to use a longer lens, and we're going to be far away. And I'm going to put myself here, and I'm just going to sketch. I want him to have a shape theme. So remember, shape is a big part of our design language, our design work, right? Do I want kind of this dark, kind of demonic kind of setting, or kind of shapes communicate that? So he's a demon. So what kind of shapes communicate that? Horn shapes obviously come to mind. Sharp angular shapes. Because what kind of villain is he? Is he like overpowering and dominating? Is he sneaky? Is he super warlike and aggressive, or is he more calculating? That's important to know. Mm, what kind of shapes represent him, and what kind of contrast do I want? Let me put him a little bit off center. I think that might be better. And where should I put the character, our main character? Should I put him here, close to us? Should I put him, make him smaller? That feels. Um, if we put the character in the scene, it has to be really tiny. I think that's a nice one right there. Let's put ourselves. So this is basically us. We're in the scene, but we're tiny. All right. Um, and I'm going to use a bit of an angular design language for our character here. Oh yeah. So this is a bit of a character design as well, but I don't want to spend too much time on the character design. So let me just come up with a demon sitting on a throne, and he's huge. He's imposing. How about he's not warlike, he's more crafty, manipulative. Let's do that. And he's big, so he is powerful. How big do I want to make him relative to the throne? That's important. And then, oh, let's give him the big horns from Legend. Okay, I like this so far. And then I like this kind of motif, circles around him. And let me make sure that I establish that I ask the right questions here. So he's crafty, he's manipulative, he's powerful, but he hides in the shadows. He commands an army that does his fighting for him. So he's a bit of a general, and but he is huge and powerful, so he could inflict some damage if he wanted to on his own. So I got to create the impression that he's also powerful and has abilities, and makes us look really small. So that's our little tiny character. And yeah, let me clean this up. So I'm just sketching, and I may not do. Let's make them red. Why not? It's harder to see the red. So I'm just going to sketch. I'm just going to sketch just some rough shapes, the ones that I need. So his demonic giant horn head. He's like a samurai general. His giant body sitting on his giant throne. His throne has this very angular shape. And I'm going to give him the thoughtful pose. hand hand on his chin. So he's thinking about how he's going to dispatch of our hero. He has these big giant feet. Obviously, he's a big giant demon bad guy, demon baddie. He has a cool throne, and over here he has. I'm going to put some kind of thing he has here. I'm not quite sure what this is. Maybe demon dogs or something. And then he has this kind of curvy motif about him and some lines to draw your eye and create perspective. I do need to sell the perspective a little bit more. So I'm gonna need some elements to do that, which Marcos talks about, to make sure that the layers of space read correctly. And so there's us, there's our point of view. Yeah, that's really about it. Okay, now I know what kind of villain he is. Let's do a little bit of a tighter shot, but with a wide angle lens so we can get some of that distortion. That'll make us feel uncomfortable. And we're going to put him below us still. So the whole world is kind of warping. So we can see our character. We're looking up at him. He's a giant. He's powerful. He's imposing. His beautiful throne kind of thing. And of course, his world is totally warping around us because of our use of a wide angle lens. So wide angle lens is used for close shots in cinematography. And one of the ways that it's used is if you want to get a close shot, but you want to feel uncomfortable. You want to feel uncomfortable. And that's what I'm trying to do here. Because as things warp, let's say these are perspective items. As they warp, you feel kind of warped. You see things that should be straight, like buildings, but they're warping. So you feel really uncomfortable. You're like, what is going on? Where am I? You feel out of out of your comfort zone. So that's why it's a powerful thing to do. And again, it's the importance of being at least aware of the effects of camera lenses. You don't have to be a pro photographer, obviously, but at least be aware of it. Okay, so that's sort of a close shot, but with a wide angle lens. Now let's do, we need to establish the villain in the layer. I'm trying to think, what if we put the character close to the camera? That's not a bad idea. What if we put us, we block some of the frame with us, and now we establish, so we're the hero, and we establish the character here, our villain, on this third. Oh, now we're closer. How about that? So we're here. We're a bit closer to the baddie. And in fact, he's looking down on us. He's leaning forward in his giant throne with his big feet. He's leaning down on us. He's leaning down. He's looking at us, looking right at us. His two, whatever, let's say they're demon dogs or whatever, demon robots thingies. And of course, we got to look wide. So here he doesn't look that big. So that's not good. I like this though, a bit more of a tighter crop. I'm going to keep that. So that's us. That's our perspective now. But this has got to change. Doesn't quite feel. Let's see if we can make him. How about he's not looking at us at all? Okay, he's not looking at us at all, but we're right on top of him, and we could just see his feet. There you go. We're at his feet, and here we could see more of the environment around him, the elements and things that are closer to him. So we're at his giant. We're at his feet, and his feet are so huge. And inside, he has he has like a henchman, someone who's our size. Yeah, someone who's our size and who's about to, we're communicating with them. So that's pretty cool. All right, so that's pretty cool. So that's us right here. This is the feet of our giant demon boss or whatever. And we can see some of the background. And the background mirrors him. It's got horns, weird things, and things like that. And the floor kind of mirrors the angular shapes of his throne. So that would be something cool to do. So again, a bit of a closer shot, but a different feeling this one. So this is a bit of a wide angle lens. This would be more of a narrow lens. And here the character would be blurred. So let's do that real quick. Here I just quickly put in a blur because this is how a narrow lens, different type of lens, will get more of this blur because it can only focus on a certain plane of space. So if you're focusing on the far plane of space, whatever's close to the camera, close to the lens will be blurry and vice versa. So here we have the effect, and that's a nice effect. So we're walking towards our villain. Could be in a way a sequential image, sequential art, sequential images. So here's the wide establishing shot. We're walking in, we see, wow, there's the room, there's our giant boss. Now we're walking, we looking up, we can see, oh, he's so imposing. And the wide angle lens makes us feel uncomfortable. Everything's warping. And then as we get closer, one of his henchmen, you could see, oh man, he's so big. We're like the size of his toe. He's huge. So we feel the scale. We can see a little bit of the environment. We can see closer to his throne and what's near the throne and the floor. We can see the cool pattern on the floor. And then we meet our first, the henchman, spokesperson for our demon. So it's kind of cool. Kind of a bit of sequential art, bit of a practice. And this is a bit out of my comfort zone, to be honest. I don't really practice sequential art. But yeah, it's really, really fun because it forces you to be aware of the story. So this is a really fun exercise. Okay, now let's quickly do a demonstration. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sketch and thumbnail. So you get to see some of my compositional process, the thumbnailing process, how I plan a picture. And I'm going to apply some of the lessons and techniques that we just covered from the book Framed Ink. Our story is going to be the classic David versus Goliath. So our hero, our modest hero versus the giant, the underdog versus the unstoppable force, David versus Goliath. I'm going to try to do three different images, three different pictures from three different points of view. Maybe one from that highlights more of David's view, one that highlights the giant's view, Goliath's view, and maybe one that showcases the audience point of view. So let's do that now. Okay, so typically when I sketch thumbnails, I work small, fast, loose, and just have fun and explore. Just sketch, 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 sketch for the sake of sketching and having fun. So David and Goliath, three different points of view. Go. So I'm just going to sketch. Boop, 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 boop. Number one, number two, number three. So I already know a little bit about the story. I'm going to go a bit more with the biblical in the Christian Bible version story of David and Goliath. So kind of know, David is just like a peaceful shepherd boy. He's a desert living shepherd boy, and he meets Goliath, which is a soldier in an army that wants to take over his little village. So, David's just a peaceful, mild-mannered guy, but he gets strength, from his faith. He gets strength from God to conquer the unstoppable, undefeated soldier, Goliath, the giant, unbeatable man. So that's just one idea, and then a little bit hint of the background. just kind of sketch. I like this wide shot where David is small. And I'm doing this format 'cause it's sort of a like a book cover or a poster format. So this would be a great for a book cover. David versus Goliath, the book or whatever, a graphic novel. So I'm just gonna sketch here, see which one I like. The word that comes to mind is small, intimidating, small, intimidating, unstoppable, undefeated. Intimidation. I want this first image to feel like, okay, this is where our two characters meet, and the giant is trying to intimidate our hero with his size, therefore intimidating the audience. So I want David to be close to us, bottom of the frame. And obviously the bottom of the frame makes him feel small. And then, oh, I like this, kind of like this bit more of a low angle shot. So this is something that, of course, Marcos Mateo Maestri mentions in the book is the low angle view, the camera position, just one of many things. There's a sword and a big shield. How about instead of a sword, it's like a hammer, like a big fly swatter or something, something like that, like a mace or a hammer or a bat or an axe. How about an axe? Just a sword seems little cliche, but whatever. Let's just put something there. I like that. I'm liking that. I'm gonna keep sketching, keep exploring. I like the low angle view. Let's change the camera angle again, or let's really emphasize this. What if we put David and Goliath on the same plane, but make it an angle? So now it's really, I kind of like it when they're on two different planes, and I'll explain why in a minute. I really like this shot. It's a nice shot too, actually. Real dramatic angle. This creates a different feeling. Now here is where it's going to be important for me to know what our character is like, what the story is about, what I want to emphasize about the story. I like this shot because it allows me to, I can picture light here. Because what I want to do, I want to emphasize the fact that this first shot is Goliath. He's trying to intimidate our hero and intimidate the audience with his size and his weapons and his perceived strength. But I want the audience to know, like, hey, this little tiny guy, he's in danger, but he's also got inner strength. Because I want to show this sort of this idea of this beam of light, or value wise, I'm going to use light to represent his strength. Metaphorically, it's biblically, it's a religious light, it's the light of God. I didn't invent that. I'm not the first to use that. Rembrandt uses it all the time. He uses this heavenly beam of light from the top, represents the light of God. Rembrandt was religious. He was a religious person. But anyway, I want to show that as a compositional element. So I like that. Let me move forward now. So now we see David's point of view. Let's show Goliath's point of view. What if this was a story or a movie or a comic or a book about Goliath's point of view, the giant versus the giant soldier versus the small shepherd boy? What would that look like? What would Goliath's point of view be? Let's do this. There you go. There you go. There's Goliath. Here's our small shepherd. So this creates a totally different mood, right? It's very straight up and orthodox, just kind of plain, no exciting camera angle. So it creates a different mood. It makes us feel like, hey, maybe he's a bit more of a gentle giant. What if that's the story? He's more of a gentle giant. He doesn't really want to fight, but he's forced to because he's a soldier, he's got to follow orders. And maybe he has a bit of a curve. That's why that curve design is really nice. So that's a bit of a shape. And what if David's at an angle? So maybe David is a bit, this angle of the horizon or the ground plane tells us a little bit of a story like, hey, maybe David is not the good guy, not so much of a good guy at all. Maybe the real good guy is Goliath because he has to climb uphill. He's fighting adversity. And typically we cheer for the underdog, right? Whoever's going through adversity in the story or the movie we cheer for. So I kind of like that. What if we put the camera, what if we do a tight shot like this? Put David here, but we put Goliath here. And there you go. And instead of having, like the demon I just sketched, maybe have more angular shapes, more curvy shapes on Goliath, so that we don't, he's huge. He takes up a big part of the frame, but he's not a total jerk, right? We want a little bit of sympathy for him, so we'll make him curvy. How about that? How about we take the same exact shot instead of David standing on a random hill or cliff ground? What if we take the same exact shot? We put Goliath right in the middle, give him some curvy shapes, and he's holding his hand out. And David's like got his stone ready. All right. He's using his stone. But Goliath's like, hey, what are you, he's just curious. Like, what's going on, little guy? So this feels more friendly. The curves feel friendly. His hand holding the hero, but the hero is like ready to fight. It's like, hey, what's going on here? So now you kind of sympathize towards Goliath, the giant. And let's do one more. I'm trying to think of a way to show Goliath's point of view. If I put him in the bottom, he will look small. If I put him on the left, yeah, here's one. Here's one. So it's kind of a little bit a mixture of the first ones. And notice all the angles. David's at an angle. He's got angular things. He's got his little stone. He's ready to fight. Angle, angle, angle. But our giant here is curvy. He's curvy. He's kind of friendly. He's like, hey, what's going on? What's going on, little guy? Why do you want to fight me? Let's be friends. So that's a bit of a different take. So this is again David and Goliath, but from the giant's point of view. And I could keep playing with this. Let me play with one more set here. Okay, so just do one more set of sketches, thumbnail sketches. And what I want to do is, so we did David's point of view. We did a set of Goliath, the good guy, the bad guy, in a way. Now let's do the audience point of view. What if we show a frame or an image that puts us into the frame? Let's say, so part of the story is the village. So let's say part of the story that I want to communicate. So there's three characters now. There's David, there's Goliath, and the village. So let's say David is protecting the village, a group of people, his community, from the giant. So what does that look like from our point of view? We have three elements now. Let's say one of the characters is a girl, like his sister and some animals. We got to protect the animals. His sister, she's wearing a dress. His sister, some animals, and we got to protect our family, our village from so all his little sheeps, his little sheeples are there. We got to face our big baddie, the giant Goliath, or whatever. Definitely got to work out his pose and the shapes. But I think generally that's an interesting thing. So we have the group of the sheeps, his animals, his village, his friends or whatever. There's his girlfriend or sister or whatever, and then he's got to protect the village from the giant Goliath. That's kind of cool from their point of view. Let's try one more from the audience point of view, the third party's point of view. Well, here's one I haven't tried. Let's do this. So we got the sheep or his village or his animals. We have a girl here surrounded by sheep. That's his girlfriend or whatever, or his little sister. Here's our hero. He's ready to fight. He has his shield. He has this stone thing, ready to twirling his stone. We have the big shadow of the giant Goliath, wow, casting a shadow on everyone. And Goliath has a sword or whatever. I just want to show that there's a character there. Actually, that shadow won't look like that, but let's take that out. It's a little too, but that's the idea. So we have our little thing here. Maybe they're cornered. So we have our hero. He's twirling his stone thingy. He has his shield. He's protecting his family or his village or his sheep and protecting them from the giant Goliath. And then here's his cast shadow. So that's what his cast shadow would really look like. And then we'd have to showcase David a little bit more. Okay, so that's a bit of a third person perspective now. It's a little interesting. Okay. Obviously needs some work. All right, let's do one more because this is tough. This is making my brain stretch a little bit. So we got the kind of a tight shot. What about so we move the camera up. What about changing the lens? Changing the lens, a wide lens. Get that fisheye effect. Ooh, that would be nice. Get that fisheye warping effect. Let's try that. Let's try that. Let's say we have some mountains or cliffside objects and they're totally warping because we're using a that really wide lens. And we have David here. We have his family here, and they're basically in the foreground. We can see his girlfriend or his village people. We can see David clearly leading the way, protecting them with his shield and his stone thingy. And the world is fish doing the fisheye thing because we're using a really weird and crazy lens to get that really uncomfortable fisheye effect. And of course, we gotta put our baddie in the scene, put Goliath. So he's he's not only bigger than us, but the camera angle is making us really uncomfortable. And then the people are surrounding him like, what do we do? What do we do? David, but that's okay. He's got the light of God. He's got the beam of light. Kind of looks like a Frazetta piece now. Put the horns on Goliath. This axe kind of looks like a Frazetta piece. It's the death dealer. So that's a bit of a wide angle warped kind of lens. I think it's a good stopping point here. So how'd you guys do? How'd you guys do if you followed along with me? Definitely try this for yourself. Try, if you're playing with thumbnails and compositions, try to play with three, first play with who the story is about mostly, right? What kind of character, what's the personality of the characters, right? If the story is David and Goliath, is Goliath really like a really bad guy? Is he an angry, vicious kind of soldier? Or is he a bit softer, right? If it's about David, what kind of hero is David, right? Is he like super strong, like Superman can do it himself? Or is he like smaller and weaker, but he's getting help from a greater power? He's accessing greater powers than him. Or is the story about more about the audience, more about a third person? So definitely stuff to play with, and definitely check out some of the concepts in the book. There are so many, I just able to touch on a few, and they all interrelate. That's the beautiful thing about composition is that every little principle, every little tactic or technique or guideline, they all kind of work together, work in harmony, work in orchestra. They're all individual little tools that work together that you can use to interplay to create the best pictures possible.